Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 89 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. And we're going on today to chapter 30. Chapter 30 is titled Description by Lord Kapila of Adverse Fruit of Activities. Interesting. Okay. All right, but let us begin though with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Right, devotees, so this is chapter 30 of the third canto, description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruit of activities. There are 34 verses in this chapter. We've divided it into 5 sections as follows. First section from verse 1 to verse 3. The materialist does not understand how the time factor is acting on him. Then next, second section, verse 4 to verse 6, he is satisfied in his material situation. He meaning the materialist. 3, from verse 7 to verse 12, the entanglement of the materialistic householder. Then fourth section, verse 13 to verse 18, the materialist is rejected and dies in great grief. Then fifth section, verse 19 to verse 34, he goes to Yamaraj and suffers hellishly. He, that's the materialist. So let's get into it. First section, verse 1 to verse 3. The materialist does not understand how the time factor is acting on him. So it's just 3 verses, so we'll just go straight through, verses and purports together. Verse 1, the personality of Godhead said, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. All right, so there's a short purport here. Let's have a look. Srila Prabhupada refers to the great politician Pandit Chanakya Pandit. And Chanakya, he said all sorts of different things. Some were very good, some were just, not so important, but some were actually important. And this here that Prabhupada refers to was one of the really important things that Chanakya came up with. Chanakya said that even one moment of time cannot be returned, even if one is prepared to pay millions of dollars. So you waste just a moment, practically nothing in terms of time wasted. You can't get it back, no matter how much you pay. So therefore, either in material life or spiritual life, but particularly for devotees, we should be very careful about time. in our particular lifetimes, the particular body we're in right now, the conditioned soul has a fixed amount of time. And so we have to finish our Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead in that time. Yeah, I mean, that's just so important. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, but unfortunately, those who are not in Krishna consciousness are carried away by the strong power of time without their knowledge, as clouds are carried by the wind. Verse 2. Whatever is produced by the materialist with great pain and labor for so-called happiness, the Supreme Personality as the time factor destroys. And for this reason, the conditioned soul laments. So Prabhupada makes a very interesting point at the beginning of this purport, that the main function of time, it represents the Lord, but the main function of time is to destroy everything. And materialists, they produce all sorts of things for enjoyment, in the name, Prabhupada says, of economic development, but they forget that everything is going to be destroyed, everything they've produced. They think that by advancing in fulfilling the material desires and needs of humanity, if they get things and build things and make things, they think that they'll be happy, but they forget this main function of time is to destroy it. Well, Prabhupada makes the point. We've seen many great empires come and go, but they're all destroyed. The British Empire, oh gosh, it's in such a state and just falling to pieces more and more. Yeah, they worked so extremely hard and many people died just to build up the empire. But a lot of it's already destroyed, and more of it is being destroyed practically every day. Yes. So, but still, despite that, the materialists can't understand that they're wasting their time producing so-called necessities which are going to be destroyed. So this waste of time and energy is due to ignorance. The mass of the people, they're ignorant. First of all, they don't know they're eternal. And then they don't know that this life on the material level, the life expectancy of the material body, is just a flash in eternity. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, not knowing this fact, they take the small flash of life to be everything, and they waste time in improving economic conditions. Verse 3, the misguided materialist does not know that his very body is impermanent and that the attractions of home, land, and wealth, which are in relationship to that impermanent body, are also temporary. Out of ignorance only, he thinks everything is permanent. That's amazing, isn't it? So, okay, there's a bit more of a purport here, a little bit more. So, Prabhupada makes the point that the materialists think that the devotees are crazy, just wasting our time chanting Hare Krishna. but actually they don't know they're in the darkest region of craziness because they think the body is permanent and things in relation to the body, the house, the country, whatever else, is permanent and must be strived for. So this is all clearly mentioned here in this verse. Prabhupada says, Mohad Griyakshetra Vasune. Out of illusion only does the materialist accept his body, land, and money as permanent. And from that illusion, the family life, the national life, and all the economic development, which are like foundational elements in the picture of modern civilization. These things have all grown from that. And a Krishna conscious person knows that the economic development of society is just a temporary illusion. And then, second paragraph, elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, acceptance of the body as the self, acceptance of others as one's kinsman in relation to the body, and the acceptance of the land of birth as worshipable. These are all products, Prabhupada says, of an animal civilization. But if a person becomes enlightened, then the person can use all these things for the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, when all economic development and material advancement are utilized to advance the cause of Krishna consciousness, a new phase of progressive life arises. So, devotees, we go on now to the second section, which is from verse 4 to verse 6, and we've called it, He is satisfied in his material situation. It means just the typical materialistic person. He's satisfied with his home and his family and whatever else. So it's from verse 4 to verse 6. So we'll just go straight through verses and purports. Verse 4, the living entity, in whatever species of life he appears, finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species, and he is never averse to being situated in such a condition. So Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, the satisfaction of the living entity in a particular type of body, even if it's most abominable, is called illusion. And you might remember, Prabhupada told the story of Lord Indra, who somehow or other, due to some offences or something went wrong, he had to take the body of a pig. And he had his pig wife and piglets, pig children, and he was living in his pig pen, which is just full of dirt and rubbish and stool. But he thought he was happy. And after his time was over in that situation, and he could return to being Lord Indra in the heavenly planets, Lord Brahma came and said, right, let's go. But Lord Indra, in the body of a pig, said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy. Yes. So like this, the living entity getting some sort of body, whatever it is, even if it's terrible, thinks that it's nice. This is illusion. This is Maya. So anyway, you know what Lord Brahma did? He killed the pig, Lord Indra in the form of the pig, killed him, and then took Indra back to the heavenly planets. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on that a man, a person who's in a relatively higher position than some others, may think his pleasure is better than that of the man in the lower position. But still, the man in the lower position is satisfied due to the spell of Maya. So a very interesting and very important philosophical point comes up next. Srila Prabhupada explains that Maya has two phases. First is called avaranatmika. Avaranatmika means covering. And secondly, prakshepatmika means pulling down. So in other words, the person in illusion, his knowledge covered and attached to the material world. So his intelligence is covered over. He doesn't know what is worth doing, what isn't worth doing. Then in that condition, he gets dragged down further, deeper into material existence. Yeah. Pulled down by Maya. So, but anyway, Prabhupada makes the point that in any condition of life, the materialistic man or the animal will be satisfied because his knowledge is covered by Maya. And in the lower species, or just the lower grade or lower species of life, the consciousness is so undeveloped that they can't understand if they're happy or they're distressed. This is called avaranatmika, if you remember, the covering potency of Maya. So even the hog, a stool eater, thinks he's happy. Although someone in a higher position can see it's terrible, it's abominable. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport of verse 4. Prabhupada just says, how abominable that life is, means of the hog, the pig, eating stool. How abominable that life is. We go on to verse 5. The conditioned living entity is satisfied in his own particular species of life. While deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy, he feels little inclined to cast off his body, even when in hell, for he takes delight in hellish enjoyment. And would you believe, devotees, look at this in the purport, at the beginning of the purport of verse 5. Prabhupada tells the story of Indra. Indra becomes the pig. Yeah, he was cursed by his guru, Brihaspati. So he forgot his heavenly standard. Just thought he was all right. Prabhupada says, by the influence of Maya, the conditioned soul becomes so affectionate towards his particular type of body that if he is offered, give up this body and immediately you'll have a king's body, he won't agree. Right. Why should we surrender to Krishna? Why should we want to go back to Godhead? So Lord Krishna is personally canvassing, come on, come back. But we're saying, we're not agreeable. We think, I'm quite all right. Why should we surrender to Krishna and go back to his kingdom? So this is called Maya, illusion. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, This is called illusion or maya. Everyone is satisfied with his standard of living, however abominable it may be. Verse 6. Such satisfaction with one's standard of living is due to deep-rooted attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. In such association, the conditioned soul thinks himself quite perfect. So there's a short purport here. So, the conditioned soul thinks himself quite perfect. Prabhupada says, the so-called perfection is a concoction. Therefore it's said that the materialist, no matter how qualified he may be, is worthless because he's just hovering on the mental plane. And in this way, he'll get dragged down to material existence. So anyone who's just situated firmly on the mental plane cannot get promotion to the spiritual plane. Actually, such a person is sure to glide down into the depths of material existence. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in the association of so-called society, friendship, and love, the conditioned soul appears completely satisfied. So now we go on to the next section, third section. It's from verse 7 to verse 12, the entanglement of the materialistic householder. So I'm going to read the verses. Verse 7. Although he's always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Verse 8. He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. Verse 9. The attached householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by acts of sense gratification. He acts just to counteract the reactions of all his miseries. And if he can successfully counteract such miseries, he thinks he's happy. Verse 10. He secures money by committing violence here and there. And although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased, and he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. Verse 11. When he suffers reverses in his occupation, he tries again and again to improve himself. But when he's baffled in all attempts and is ruined, he accepts money from others because of excessive greed. And verse 12. Thus the unfortunate man, unsuccessful in maintaining his family members, is bereft of all beauty. He always thinks of his failure, grieving very deeply. Phew, this is very intense, isn't it? Okay, so here we go, devotees. Beginning the section 3, verse 7 to 12, the entanglement of the materialistic householder. Verse 7. Although he's always burning with anxiety, such a fool always performs all kinds of mischievous activities with a hope which is never to be fulfilled in order to maintain his so-called family and society. Right. So Prabhupada brings up a very interesting point, that it is said that it's easier to maintain an empire than maintain a small family. And that's true especially now in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is so strong. Everyone has so many problems because of Maya. So here in this material world, the family we have, the family, if you're a householder, the family you're maintaining is created by Maya. And it's the perverted reflection of a family in Krishna Loka, in the kingdom of God. Because there are also families, friends, society, father, mother, but they're eternal, they're blissful, they're ecstatic, and they're wonderful. But here, in this world, as we change bodies, our family relationships change. Sometimes we may be in a demigod family, sometimes human, sometimes maybe even cats, or sometimes dogs. So, but it's all flickering. It's asat, means temporary. So as long as we're attached to the asat, we're full of anxieties. You remember, I don't know if you remember, it was mentioned not long ago at all, that Lord Chaitanya, when he was asked, what is the natural behavior of a Vaishnava, of a devotee? Lord Chaitanya answered, Asat Sangha Tyaga, a Vaishnav Acha. The natural activity of a Vaishnav is Asat Sangha Tyaga, to renounce all that flickering, temporary association. Asat Sangha. So anyway, the materialists, they don't know that the family, society, etc. here, they're just shadows of the real family and society in Goloka Vrindavan. So they don't know, and they just become attached. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, naturally their hearts are always burning, but in spite of all inconvenience, they still work to maintain such false families because they have no information of the real family association with Krishna. So verse 8, and this is pretty intense, devotees. He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and he is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. So Prabhupada makes the point, I mean, there's a reasonable purport here, not so big, but it's something. Prabhupada makes the point that family life in Maya is like a prison for the eternal spirit soul. In prison, of course, you're shackled by iron chains, bars, and that sort of thing. So in a similar way, in effect, the conditioned soul is shackled by the beauty of a woman, her solitary embraces, as we read, the talks of love and the sweet words of the children. So in this way, the man forgets his real identity. And then in the second paragraph, Prabhupada says that in this verse, the words strinam asatinam indicate that womanly love is just to agitate the mind of a man. Because in this world, material world, there is no love. Rather, the man and the woman come together, and all they're coming together for is that each one wants his or her own sense gratification, that's all. So for sense gratification, a woman creates an illusory love, and the man becomes enchanted by such false love and forgets his real duty. And of course, when there are children, as the result of them coming together, the next attraction is to the sweet words of the children. Oh, Krishna. So, for the man, the love of the woman at home and the talk of the children make one a secure prisoner. And you can't get out. You can't escape. Prabhupada says, and thus he cannot leave his home. So such a person is termed in Vedic language, as we have heard already, such a person is called a grihamedi, which means one whose center of attraction is the home. Yes. Whereas there's another word, grihasta, of course we know about this. Grihasta refers to one who lives with family, wife, children. But the real interest, the real purpose of living for him and for them is to develop Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So therefore, if you want family life, then you're advised to become a grihasta and not a grihamedi. Yeah. The grihamedi wants to repeatedly chain himself to so-called family life, life after life, in the darkness of Maya. So, okay, on we go. Verse 9. The attached householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by acts of sense gratification. He acts just to counteract the reactions of all his miseries. And if he can successfully counteract such miseries, he thinks he is happy. He thinks he is successful. Right, okay. So let's have a look at the purport. So Prabhupada makes the point, first of all, that in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna certifies. He gives a certificate, signed, stamped. The Lord certifies the material world as being an impermanent place of miseries. That there's no question of happiness here, either individually or collectively. Yeah, either individually or in terms of family, society, or country. So if some situation seems like happiness, it's illusion. Yeah. Happiness, well, as the verse says, happiness means successfully counteracting the effects of distress. So the material world, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, the material world is so made that unless you're a clever diplomat, your life will be a failure. The same applies even to animals, that even the birds and the bees cleverly try to manage their bodily demands of eating, sleeping, and mating. And of course, in human society, it's full of competition, individually, nationally. So actually the human society is full of diplomacy. But having said that, we should always remember that despite all diplomacy, intelligence, everything can end in a second by the divine will. You know, I was reading something in some news publication, I don't know, maybe early this week or maybe last week, that of some of these people in some of these war situations. And so there they are. It's a husband with his wife and some children. Suddenly, bang, the war, there's some attack. And then on the spot, he loses his wife and children. Yeah. As Prabhupada says, everything can end in a second by the divine will. Yes. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore, all our attempts to become happy in this material world are simply a delusion offered by Maya. So we go on to verse 10. So he, the materialist, of course, he secures money by committing violence here and there. And although he employs it in the service of his family, he himself eats only a little portion of the food thus purchased. And he goes to hell for those for whom he earned the money in such an irregular way. So let's have a look here. There is actually a more sort of developed purport here. Prabhupada begins the purport by quoting a Bengali proverb. The person for whom I have stolen accuses me of being a thief. So Prabhupada makes the point. The family members for whom the attached man does so many criminal things, they're never satisfied. They're never satisfied. Although serving them, he's destined to go to hell. Yeah. And the example is given, Prabhupada gives the example. A thief steals something to maintain his family, but is then caught and imprisoned. And Prabhupada says, this is the sum and substance of material existence and attachment to material society, friendship, and love. So, although the family man is always engaged, getting money by hook or by crook for the family, he can't enjoy more than what he can eat, more than what he can consume. Even if he didn't perform criminal activities. So Prabhupada makes the point, a man who eats 8 ounces of foodstuffs may have to maintain a big family and earn money by any means to support that family. But he himself is not offered more than what he can eat. Sometimes he eats the remnants which are left behind after his family members are fed. So even by earning money by unfair means, wrong means, criminal means sometimes, still he cannot enjoy life for himself. So that is all. What is that? Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. That is called the covering illusion of Maya. Right, so on to the second paragraph. The process of illusory service to society, country, community is the same everywhere. It's applicable, listen to this everyone, it's applicable even to big leaders. And Prabhupada gives the example that sometimes a big leader, national leader, is killed by his countrymen, but because of some irregularities in his service to them. So in other words, you can't satisfy your dependents, although you can't get out of serving them. And why can't you get out of serving them? Because being a servant is your constitutional position. So yes, by constitution we should serve the Supreme Lord, but we've forgotten that. So we serve others. This is Maya. And even one may, Prabhupada says, by serving others he falsely thinks that he is the master. And Prabhupada gives the example that the head of the family thinks he's the master of the family, or the leader of the nation thinks he's master of the nation, although actually he's serving all the members, either of the family or of the nation. And by that Maya service, he's going to hell. So therefore, Prabhupada makes the point, a sane man should come to the point of Krishna consciousness and engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. And we should apply our whole life, all of our wealth, our intelligence, our power of speaking, everything, in serving the Lord in Krishna consciousness. So, verse 11, when he suffers reverses in his occupation, he tries again and again to improve himself. But when he's baffled in all attempts and is ruined, he accepts money from others because of excessive greed. There's no purport. Let's read verse 12. Thus the unfortunate man, unsuccessful in maintaining his family members, is bereft of all duty. He always thinks of his failure, grieving very deeply. Okay, devotees, so now we move on to section 4, verse 13 to verse 18. The title is, The Materialist is Rejected and Dies in Great Grief. But you know what we'll do? It's quite a short section. And there are verses which have no purports, or there are verses with very short purports. So what we'll do, I won't read through all the verses and then come back and do the verses and purports. What I'll do, I'll just read straight through verses and purports. So here we go. Verse 13. Seeing him unable to support them, his wife and others do not treat him with the same respect as before. Even as miserly farmers do not accord the same treatment to their old and worn-out oxen. So, Srila Prabhupada makes the point, and these are points. We've got to get these points. Prabhupada says, it's not just now, but from time immemorial, No one likes an old man who can't earn for his family. Yeah. Even nowadays, in some places, communities, countries, old men are given poison so they die as soon as possible. And Prabhupada makes the extraordinary, very amazing point. In some cannibalistic communities, they eat people, the old grandfather is sportingly killed and eaten. And of course the farmer, he doesn't like his old bull who's stopped working, who can't work any longer. Similarly, when just some old man, an old man in family life is unable to earn, then he's no longer liked by the family members, so he's neglected. What to speak of not being respected, but they just ignore him, that sort of situation. So therefore one should give up family attachment before old age and take shelter of the Lord. As Prabhupada said quoted on many occasions, Panchasoradvam vanam vrajet. When you get over 50, you should go to the forest. So anyway, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, one should employ himself in the Lord's service so that the Supreme Lord can take charge of him, and he'll not be neglected by his so-called kinsmen. Verse 14. The foolish family man does not become averse to family life, although he's maintained by those whom he once maintained. Deformed by the influence of old age, he prepares himself to meet ultimate death. And okay, let's have a look at the purport of verse 14. Prabhupada says, the family attraction is so strong that even if one is neglected by the family in old age, still the man can't give up the family affection, and he stays home like an old dog. So, but in the Vedic way of life, you have to give up family life while you're still strong enough. So before you become too weak or diseased, one should leave home and engage completely in devotional service for the rest of his life. So, we just mentioned, the Vedic literatures say as soon as one passes 50, he must give up family life and live alone in the forest. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, after preparing himself fully, he should become a sannyasi to distribute the knowledge of spiritual life to each and every home. Verse 15. Thus he remains at home, just like a pet dog, and eats whatever is so negligently given to him. Afflicted with many illnesses, such as dyspepsia and loss of appetite, he eats only very small morsels of food, and he becomes an invalid who cannot work anymore. So let's look at the purport here. So, before death comes, one is sure to become diseased and invalid. And when one is neglected by his family, his life becomes less than a dog's, becomes very miserable. So the Vedic literatures say that before that time comes, leave home and die without the family knowing. That is considered a glorious death. But the attached family man wants wants the family to carry him in a nice procession after death. Even though he won't see the procession, he still wants it. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus he is happy without even knowing where he has to go when he leaves his body for the next life. Verse 16, in that diseased condition, one's eyes bulge due to the pressure of air from within, and his glands become congested with mucus. He has difficulty breathing, and upon exhaling and inhaling, he produces a sound like gara gara, a rattling within the throat. There's no purport here. So on to verse 17. In this way, he comes under the clutches of death and lies down, surrounded by lamenting friends and relatives. And although he wants to speak with them, he no longer can, because he's under the control of time. So there's very short purport here. As a formality, when a man is lying on his deathbed, relatives come and cry, oh, my friend, oh, my father. But it's just a formality. I don't know if any of you ever saw when the last dictator of North Korea died. Yeah, then there were thousands of people, even though they're living very austere lives, and they hardly got anything. But they came out in public, thousands of them, and they were crying and just making a whole spectacle, like they are missing him so much. Oh, what a loss. Prabhupada says here that it's just a formality. Just a formality. So the dying man wants to address them, instruct them of his desires, but he can't express himself, and this is very painful for him. He's already in great pain in different ways, and when the relatives address him like this, his grief increases. So on to verse 18, which is the last verse in this section. Thus the man who engaged with uncontrolled senses in maintaining a family dies in great grief. Seeing his relatives crying, he dies most pathetically in great pain and without consciousness. Right, so let's go through the purport. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that when the time of death comes, a person becomes absorbed in the thoughts that they cultivated during their lifetime. So a person who was absorbed in thoughts of maintaining his family will have such thoughts. Family maintenance thoughts will be his last thoughts. That's just a natural sequence. So, of course, the common man doesn't know his destiny, where his karma is going to take him. He's simply busy in his flash of life, maintaining his family. And then so at the end, no one is satisfied by how he improved the family economic condition. Everyone thinks he couldn't provide enough. Oh, Krishna. So he forgets if he knew, he forgets. In many cases, he doesn't even know that his main necessity is to control the senses and improve spiritually. So sometimes the dying man entrusts family affairs to his son or some relative, and he instructs them, do this, do that, how to look after the family. But he doesn't know where he's going. But still, even though it's the time of death, he's still worried about how the family will be maintained. And Prabhupada makes the point, sometimes at the time of death, the dying man asks a doctor to increase his life just for a little while so he can work out his family maintenance plan better. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, he completely forgets his real engagement to become Krishna conscious and is always serious about planning to maintain his family, although he changes families one after another. So there we go, devotees. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.